how have you been buoyed in your first year and anchored with the ideals that you were elected to office with in this absolute maelstrom of distrust of the government, distrust in DC, side to side, and just this gamesmanship that happens all the time?
Yeah, I think it's been an exercise in kind of peeling back the layers. Your point on DC being very chaotic, and yet it's both very visceral in terms of if you're watching TV or if you're reading in the newspaper, it'll get your blood pressure up. At the same time, what impacts do you see from the decisions being made in Washington or not being made in Washington? What do you see manifesting themselves in West Michigan? Mm-hmm. And it can be a bit of an abstraction, right? Like it's like there's this show going on, but it doesn't really have much bearing. And I think that's frankly one of the problems is, the government can shut down, and federal government, that is. If you're a federal employee, maybe you're furloughed. If you want to go to maybe a national park, you can't. Mm-hmm. But the actual impact, there's a fiscal impact. It costs more to shut the government down, start it back up. But the impact on an everyday American's life is pretty minimal. Your local city shuts down and municipal services aren't being delivered. The police maybe aren't patrolling. Maybe the fire department takes longer, if at all. Sure. Trash doesn't get picked up. Like those are real tangible consequences. Yeah. And I think a lot of the dysfunction is because of that abstraction. If it happens in DC, it's really, I think, frankly, the defund the police movement was a great example of this. In high-minded rhetoric in Washington, it's a great tagline. When that starts to be debated among a city commission or within a municipal context, people say, okay, wait, hold on. Like, how is this actually going to play out, right? You don't think of how something's going to play out when you're talking about it at the national level. The consequences come at home.
The Full Exposure Podcast is brought to you by Dr. Peter Hahn and University of Michigan Health West, in appreciation of the creative and artistic visionaries who enrich our lives through cultural connections.